You ever see someone break a rule? I mean, anything from a serious crime to just, cutting in line, and you just think to yourself, why on earth would they do that? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going to look at how we answer that question, because believe it or not, our answers really do shape the world around us.
All right, so let's get right into it. Why do people break the rules? It's a question we ask ourselves constantly, right? You see a crime on the news, or maybe you see someone cheating on a test, and your brain just automatically goes into detective mode, trying to figure out why. What's the reason?
And, our first instinct, almost always, is to look for something inside that person. We think, okay, is it something in their genes, a mental issue, or maybe they just made a cold, calculated choice? And these explanations, they feel so neat and tidy. But is that really the full picture?
So, to really unpack that, let's take a look at a famous case. One that really made people stop and ask these exact same questions. It's a case that seriously challenges our most basic assumptions about where this kind of behavior comes from.
Okay, so when Timothy McVeigh was asked to explain why he carried out the Oklahoma City bombing, he didn't say, "There's something wrong with me." Nope, he pointed outward. He actually claimed that he was just a good student, and that his own government had been his teacher. I mean, what a shocking thing to say, right? But it forces us to ask this really radical question. What if deviance isn't some internal flaw? What if it's something people actually learn from the world around them?
And that right there, that leads us straight to a huge idea in sociology. The idea that maybe deviance isn't something you are, it's something you become. And it happens through a process that, well, all of us go through, every single day. That process has a name. It's called socialization. I mean, think about it. From the second we're born, we're basically learning the script for how to operate in our society. We learn to say please and thank you. We learn to wait in line. We learn what's funny and what's not. We are constantly being coached on the skills and values we need to just play our part. So, who are the teachers in this lifelong classroom? Well, they're literally everywhere. Our families, our friends, our schools and jobs, even the TV shows we watch and the stuff we see online. All of these are what we call agents of socialization. They're constantly showing us the ropes, how to act, what to think, how to feel. And through all this socialization, we learn to play dozens and dozens of different social roles. A role is really just the set of expectations that comes with a certain position. So, for example, we expect a doctor to be caring, a parent to be responsible, an artist to be creative. It's the part society has written for us.
But here's the thing, we never just play one role at a time, do we? Just think about a typical student. They're not just a student, they might also be working a part-time job, so they're an employee, they're a friend, maybe they're on a sports team. This whole collection of roles is called a role set. And let's be real, most of our lives are spent just trying to juggle all these different expectations. But, and this is the really big question, what happens when one of those roles starts to take over? Especially if it's a deviant role. What happens when one part you play becomes more important than all the others combined?
This brings us to a super important distinction we have to make. See, committing a single deviant act, like, say, a college student binge drinking at one party, is a totally different thing from taking on a deviant role. A role is when that behavior becomes your identity. It's when that student isn't just someone who drank too much once, they become the alcoholic in everyone's eyes. See the difference? An act is a moment in time. A role, well, that's a whole script you start to live out.
And when a deviant role gets that powerful, we call it a master role. It becomes so dominant that the person themselves and everybody around them starts to organize everything else around that one single identity. It completely changes how you see yourself, and it absolutely changes how the rest of the world sees you.
Okay, so if deviance can be a social role that we actually learn, how does that square with those other explanations we talked about at the beginning? The ones that are always looking for a cause inside the person.
I mean, let's be honest, it's just simpler to blame the individual, isn't it? These individualistic theories give us a clear target. We can point and say, the problem is their genes, or the problem is their psychology, or they made a bad choice. And then we can focus on trying to fix them, and we don't have to look at the messy, complicated, bigger picture.
So these individualistic theories, they come in a few different flavors. You've got your biological theories, which are all about finding the cause in our DNA. Then there are psychiatric and psychological models that point to something in our minds or our personalities. And of course, rational choice theories, which say it's all just a simple calculation of risks versus rewards. But what's the one thing they all have in common? Every single one of them puts the problem squarely inside the individual.
But this is where these explanations can get, well, a little bit circular.
Let's take the case of Jeffrey Dahmer. A lot of people argued that his crimes were so horrific they had to be the result of insanity. In fact, one psychologist during the trial said that it wasn't even the acts themselves that proved he was mentally ill, but his bizarre explanations for them.
And do you see the logical trap here? It's like, how do we know he's ill? Well, because he did these terrible things. Okay, but why did he do those things? Because he's ill. It just goes around and around in a circle. It doesn't actually explain anything. It just slaps a label on the behavior.
So what this really shows us is that it's not that these individual theories are just playing wrong, it's that they're dangerously incomplete. By zooming in so closely on the person, they miss the entire social world that's operating around them.
The sociological perspective argues that you just can't understand the behavior if you don't also understand the social reaction to that behavior. How does our society decide to label some acts as deviant but not others? Once that label gets stuck on someone, how much power does it have? And how does a person's entire social world shape the path they're on?
Because once someone gets successfully labeled as deviant, they have to deal with something called stigma. And this is way more than just a bad feeling. It's a really powerful social force. It's like a mark of disgrace that can change every single interaction they have with people and basically cut them off from the rest of so-called normal society.
And this really drives home just how social this all is. To cope with that stigma, people develop all these different strategies to manage it. You can see a few here. They might try secrecy, just hiding what they do. Or they might rationalize it, come up with excuses and justifications. Some people even end up joining deviant subcultures where they can finally find some acceptance. Now, this isn't genetics or brain chemistry at work. This is social survival.
So, when you boil it all down, becoming deviant isn't like flipping a switch. It's not an on or off thing. It's a journey. It's a whole process that unfolds over time, shaped by our interactions with others, the roles we're taught to play, and how we respond to the labels that society sticks on us.
And that leaves us with one last and maybe most important question to chew on. If society is the one teaching the roles, applying the labels, and creating the stigma, then who exactly gets to write the rules in the first place?